Good afternoon, Paul and Bhargav. It's Thursday, the 29th of June. Here's the heads up brief for today. For the Southeast Asia production, we covered 18 issues. In North Asia, we covered 7, and for Australasia and the Pacific Islands, we covered 6. In South Asia, we covered 16 issues, plus the major issues in Europe, and Middle East, and Africa.
Okay, excellent, Uday. Thank you very much. Hi, Bhargav. We've had a couple of meetings today. Go ahead.
Right. In Thailand, the Pheu Thai Party and Move Forward Party will try to resolve the House Speaker issue in a meeting on the 2nd of July. This is a day before the House of Representatives officially opens, and Parliament will convene on the 4th of July to elect the House Speaker and Deputy Speakers.
Okay, excellent. Let's see how that progresses, of course. I'm going to go to Bangkok 6 to 8 July, and then I'll go up there again after China. So around about 11, 12 July, just to keep a bit of a lookout on the streets there more than anything and get a feel for it, do some interviews. But Uday, have you got any thoughts on where this is heading? Do you think the media ownership thing is going to come out of the bag sooner than later, or do you think the powers to be are going to keep that up their sleeve and just see how this unfolds? Feel free to reiterate what you said yesterday. I think it's good for other listeners to hear on.
Yeah, Paul, I think it is something that is definitely upcoming with regards to the media shares. As I mentioned yesterday, there is additional pressure on the election commission from a lot of the conservative and establishment forces to investigate Peter and see whether he should be disqualified. So that is definitely progressing, and right now it's important to see whether the Pheu Thai Party and Move Forward Party will be able to resolve the issue just a day before Parliament convenes, which is unlikely at this point, considering they haven't been able to for the last 2-3 weeks.
Yeah, look, I think when money becomes the primary drive rather than the power, I think Thaksin's going to get increasingly desperate to make concessions, albeit through the Pheu Thai Party as if it's an independent political party operating in a mature democracy, which of course we know anything about Thailand and about Thaksin, who couldn't be anything further from the truth. I'll obviously get back to you with some secure messaging from meetings I'm having up there on those days. So we'll defer it until then, but I think it's going to be interesting to see how the establishment plays this one, and it'll be a great indicator for how future elections are going to unfold. But again, couldn't Peter fool thee for leaving yourself vulnerable in the valley of doom? Thank you.
Right. Moving over to Indonesia, there was a protest in Bogor and West Java yesterday against the prevalence of corruption in the upcoming elections. More protests like this, organized by civil society groups, are bound to increase in the coming months as the country gears up for the February 2024 presidential and legislative elections.
Yeah, look, and I think over the next month, let's start putting together a hotspot of demonstrations from previous elections. Obviously, the one in Bogor was fairly minor in the historical scheme of things in Indonesia, but I do think it's worth us getting some graphics together, a bit of an assessment, so companies can see potential areas that are likely to be affected based on historical demonstration areas. Okay.
Yeah, sure, we'll do, Paul. And in Papua New Guinea, the superintendent of the National Capital District said that criminal gangs were using street vendors to gain information before carrying out criminal activities in Port Moresby, as he warned of the increasing criminality in the city.
Yeah, look, and as the complexity of this grows, I mean, Silver Siki's a pretty cool dude. Manning, you know, he's an incredible human. He's one of the toughest jobs in the world, running police in Papua New Guinea. But when these guys come out and make these statements, when Manning says, you know, kidnap for ransom, kidnap for extortion, you know, these are real powerful comments, because these guys are managing these issues, and they're managing them without a government that's supported to law and order. The government's very committed to making public relations statements to cover up the cracks and, frankly, cover up their own inadequacies and incompetencies and all the wrong agendas they have on their plate for managing a country. But when these guys start to heed to issue such statements, the criminal gangs are utilising a network of vendors to give them the information so they can see vulnerabilities to attack. When Manning himself's talking about the growth of kidnapping and ransom, and you speak to people that manages security in the country, from within the country and from outside it, fundamentally, some people don't need risk assessments and expert opinion. They need dead bodies and ransom demands, and some of them still don't adjust accordingly. They still know better because somebody told them at a coffee machine once that it's all good. And of course, it is all good when it's all good. But when you're operating in an environment where lives are on the line, you perhaps need to extract thyself from one's own arrogance and ignorance and understand these risk paradigms. And I've got a couple of meetings coming up with some entities operating both in Papua and Papua New Guinea. I'll chat with you offline about some of the briefings we need to do, and also, Bhargav, the library of assessments and how we can refer clients into those assessments so that they can actually search various assessments without needing to contact us, so that there's not an additional barrier or layer for them to come through to be able to search that. And we're going to have to teach them how to use it and familiarise them with it. All right, back to you, Uday. Thanks.
In South Asia, violence is surging in West Bengal, in India, ahead of the July 8th local body elections. At least 9 local leaders or activists have been killed in the last week. Clashes broke out between the ruling Trinamool Congress and the opposition Bharatiya Janata Party yesterday. Authorities have also confiscated explosives on various raids over the past couple of weeks.
Yes, the recent clashes are reflective of how militant the political spectrum is in the state of West Bengal. It's a state of nearly 100 million people and has a history of political clashes between various parties. And in the current climate, it is Trinamool Congress, which is in power in the state, and the BJP, which is in power in the center. Of course, it's a federal structure, so the central government doesn't officially interfere, but parties do try to gain legitimacy and gain political mileage in the states because they have upper hand and control over the paramilitary forces. As the violence continue, it's very likely that they will push for deployment for central paramilitary forces. With that, it may control violence to some extent, but we can't discount how militant the political cadres can get at a village and town and city level, as we are witnessing right now with even local body elections. And this is also indicative of how different and complex the political spectrum will be from state to state. For example, a couple of months ago, there was a similar state level election in Karnataka with 70 million people without a single shot being fired. Whereas in West Bengal, even local body elections, we see bomb blasts, killings happening. So that's how complex the political spectrum is in India.
Great. And also in India, a popular political leader, who's the chief of the Bhim Army political group, Chandrasekhar Azad, was injured yesterday after unidentified gunmen opened fire at his vehicle in Saharanpur district, Uttar Pradesh.
UP or Uttar Pradesh in the north, UP or Uttar Pradesh in the north is very well known for the prevalence of illegal weaponry at the ground level, and it has been very difficult to control that for the law enforcement. And given such a scenario, such shootings and violence between the political cadres is very common. It's not unheard of, especially at the ground level or the village level. So we'll have to keep a close eye, because sometimes such violence do spread across state lines into major cities such as Delhi and Calcutta.
Great, we'll keep an eye on that. And moving over to Europe and the Middle East, violent protests have broken out in Paris in the last few days after the police killed a teenager on the 27th of June. The victim was shot dead for not stopping at a traffic stop, and authorities have increased security throughout the city.
These issues are more of a problem in the US. It seems like it has crossed across the Atlantic pond and into European mainstream as well. This is not the first time police had similar issues. There were massive resignations a couple of years ago. So we'll have to keep a close eye on this. Sometimes these protests can spread nationwide and may also attract protests in other major cities in Europe.
Right. And in Sweden, a Quran was burned outside Stockholm Central Mosque in a protest yesterday. This has angered Turkey, who is pressuring Sweden to take action against the anti-Islam and pro-Kurdish protests in the country, which has been affecting their ratification of Sweden's NATO membership. And there's also concerns of protests in Muslim countries erupting over the incidents.
Yes, so similar protests have caused massive nationwide protests across the Muslim world in the past, especially those coming out of France. Sweden isn't a major player in these countries, so expecting such a major protests wouldn't be prudent. However, Turkey is going to take advantage of such incidents and basically say that they don't really belong in the NATO because they can't control their own population. So we'll see how the geopolitical element of or aspect of such a protest will evolve with NATO membership on cards.
Right. And lastly, 2 people were killed in an exchange of gunfire between Saudi security personnel and gunmen near the U.S. consulate building in Jeddah yesterday. The assailant and a security guard died. Investigations are underway to establish the cause of the attack.
All right. Thank you. Nothing further from my end.
That's the brief for today.
No, neither from my end. Thank you, guys. Cheers.